My name is Monk Rowe, and we're filming in Manhattan today. And I'm very, very pleased to have Chico Hamilton with me, who's had a long and illustrious and varied career in music. Would you mind telling me what you're up to in the year 2000?
Sure. I'm just trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
Now, as a matter of fact, we're up to a whole lot of things. The group, my orchestra, I don't refer to it as a band, it's an orchestra, because I think we try to cover all facets of music, not just one direction, you know, and not necessarily under the terminology of even of jazz, J-A-Z-Z.
Yeah.
I really disapprove of the word myself. I'm in complete accordance with people like, with Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, people like that. You know, why not call it just my music? Mm-hmm. Chico's music. Mm-hmm. Duke Ellington's music, Duke Ellington's music. Miles Davis, Miles' music. Yeah. Benny Goodman's music. You know, why do you have to call, why label it jazz? Mm-hmm. Because the word itself has nothing to do with music from the origin.
Right.
So, but anyway, getting back to the 2000, we have tours lined up, European, Far East, more recordings, and it's about the size of it. You know, you can't do any more than that.
Right.
You know?
Does it make a problem with, if you're trying to find a record label to promote your work, they need to put a title to what it is? If you don't want to call it jazz, but they do.
Well, why not just call it music? Mm. You know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because basically, primarily, all we're dealing in is human emotions. Mm-hmm. Is the way one might feel, you know. And I don't expect you to feel the same way that I do about a note or a sound, you know.
Right. And
it's good because you don't feel the same way, because that way we have an abundance of a variety of emotions. Mm-hmm. Everybody's, you know, puts their feelings into a mood, and it becomes different, mm-hmm. which is dynamite. Because if it all sound the same, it'd be boring as hell, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Did you have trouble finding the right people for this particular group?
I've been very fortunate along those lines. Very, very, very lucky, because seemingly everyone that becomes involved with what I'm trying to say happens to be at the right place at the right time. So their sound is the sound, becomes the sound of the group, you know? And what keeps the group identity, which has nothing to do with my ego or anything, is the way that I play, is the rhythm. Every drummer determines what a group is going to sound like, whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah.
He's going to determine whether it's happening or whether it's not happening. So,
right.
And fortunately, since I'm the drummer, I'll determine, you know, what it's going to sound like and what it's going to feel like, irregardless of who's up there on the front line or who's playing the melody.
I would have to agree with that. After I told you I saw Louis Hayes.
Yeah. He
gave that group a certain identity. I mean, he's very
I can dig that.
High energy and active, I guess. If you can be real honest and don't worry about your ego, can you tell me where do you fit in the in the line of drummers and in innovation in your music? I mean, I don't know if I asked that question very well, but
well, I don't know. And I'm being very honest. First of all, it's totally impossible for two drummers to play alike, mm-hmm. because of the physical aspect. One might have long arms, one might have short arms. And if you have short arms, that means that you have to sit closer to your instrument. If you have long arms, you sit back, that type of thing, for reach. And just the space between makes a difference in the sound you're going to get, or the touch you're going to acquire to get the sound. I don't sound like anybody else, mm-hmm. and I don't know of anybody that sounds like me. Here again, it becomes very personal. It all depends on what you like and what you don't like, you know? To see, I think that anybody drummers that try to play is doing a hell of a job. Is contributing to something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, the old adage about, hey, give the drummer some,
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. But I don't know, man, I just do what I do.
Yeah.
And Louis Hayes does what he does,
Right.
Max does what he does, Kenny Clark did what he did, Joe Jones did what he did, Sonny Greer, all of them. Alvin Hayes, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, you know, they're all, that's how broad and beautiful this whole thing is in regards to playing that, approaching that instrument,
Yeah.
you know? So it all depends on whose beat you dig.
Yeah, right. It's usually left to the non-musicians, I guess, to try to put down, you know, this guy was influenced by this guy and so forth. Sometimes it's true and sometimes maybe not.
Well, I believe that everybody, every living human being is a musician. Some are learned and some are not. Those who are learned become fantastic musicians. They become players,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Then there are those who have become fantastic listeners, which, you know, you can't tell anyone how to listen to music, you know?
Yeah.
But you can tell someone how to play, or how you would like them to play, but you can't tell them how to listen to music. So in order to listen to music, that calls for some musicianship, you know? This is an innate thing that we all are blessed with. Because I believe that music is one of God's wills, and God's will be done, you know? You can quote me on that.
It's a good quote.
You know?
The spiritual aspect of the craft, has that always been with you?
I think so. I think so. I think so, because it's just through the grace of God, man, that I'm even here today, you know? Even as a kid, coming up, I used to shine shoes with a shoe shine box to make enough money so that I bought my first set of drums shining shoes, you know? So that was help from the man upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I sincerely believe that it is God's will about music, because also there's no anger in music. There's no prejudice in music.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So it's got to be, something's got to be happening, you know?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, can you imagine what this world would be like without music?
No, I wouldn't want to think about that.
So
Yeah.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, my instrument has been more devastating than bombs. You know, to strike the fear into a human being, you know, Hitler proved that.
Mm.
When he had this march, you know. In the early years of Africa, the drums, hey, you heard them? Boom, boom, right? And the Indians, boom, 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 you know? Hey, man.
Something's going to happen.
As a matter of fact, you could take, right here in New York, believe me, trust me, you can take a 100-piece orchestra or a 100-piece marching band and let them march down Fifth Avenue, right? And people would say, oh yeah, okay, that's just a band, right? Mm-hmm. But you take one drummer, one man, or one kid with a drum and let him walk down Fifth Avenue playing it, and it'll stop traffic. It will stop the world. Look at that, right? They don't know whether he's an idiot or what, you know, but it'll stop traffic. You take a kid to a music store, right?
Yeah.
And just let him walk in the music store, and the first thing he'll do, he'll go over to where the drums are and touch them.
Yeah.
He won't go to the trombones, he won't go to the trumpets, he won't go to the saxophone. He'd even outdo guitars.
Yeah.
He'll go over to the drums.
It's impossible for them to walk by it without...
Without hitting it or
Yep.
touching it.
Right.
It's the skin you love to touch,
Mm-hmm.
which is the name of my book I'm writing.
Oh,
So anyway,
Great.
I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah. Look forward to that. It's a long process, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Writing a book.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange process for the simple reason that the potential publishers want me to write about all the dirty things I know, bad things I know about people, and I refuse to do this.
Right. You know, I've noticed there's a real fraternity amongst musicians that no one that I've talked to has offered those kinds of things. And I'm not really after them, but even like we were talking about Benny Goodman, who apparently could have been a real difficult person, but the worst anybody has ever said about him is, "Oh, that Benny, what a character," you know. Well, people don't want to.
No, well, you know, it's people are people, and just because you happen to be blessed so that you can play an instrument and play it well, doesn't mean that if you're a dirty dude, man, if you're a bad guy, you're still a bad guy. Does not necessarily mean that you're going to play bad.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah.
So, people, we do bring our personalities into what we do in our playing. You know, somewhere down the line, it shows up. So,
right.
But I would say overall, there's a camaraderie among musicians, as opposed to, for instance, you take actors. There's no camaraderie among actors, and it's for a simple reason. It's because a musician, in order to make music, we have to play together. Mm-hmm. You know, ensemble, right? Whatever. An actor, there's only one part. If you got the part, I ain't worried.
That's right. It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, you grew up in a pretty musical atmosphere in
Yes, I did.
Central Avenue and in Los Angeles. Yeah. And I've read some interesting things about that. At what point in your youth did you think that maybe you could make a living as a musician? Tough question, huh?
No, it's a good question, but I never thought about it. I never thought about whether or not I could not make my living playing music, making music, or, you know, at this stage of the game, I'm fortunate enough to make music, but playing music, or, you know, I've always, I've been making my living ever since I was about 12, 13 years old, playing drums. You know?
Yeah.
So it never, I've never had an occasion to even, plus the fact I've been fortunate enough to, I've done nothing else but music all my life. Yeah? When I stopped shining shoes as a kid, that was it. Boom, straight ahead. I haven't looked back, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's an honorable profession also, shining shoes, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, I never had any doubts. You know?
Well, that's a great way to put it, that you never thought you couldn't.
Yeah, you know. Plus the fact, I learned very early in life. I learned how to live off of $5 a day, $5 a minute, $5 a second, $5 a week, $5 a year. So, you know.
That sounds like a book right there.
Yeah. Well, you learn that, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Which is cool.
I had a couple, Jack Kelson.
Go ahead, ask me anything.
Yeah, Jack Kelson said he had a couple of interesting anecdotes or remembrances of those times, and he said something about in grammar school where the band person would go around and everybody get to play something. When it got to you, you'd like wipe everybody out. Is that true?
Jack happens to be my dearest, oldest, dearest, best friend. And you know what? I just talked to him the other day. We have never had a crossword. And we've been knowing each other since we were 8 years old.
Wow.
You know?
That's great.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he's totally responsible, I guess, for me getting into music, because his folks gave him a clarinet when he was around that age, you know. So he being my best friend, I had to have a clarinet, and we were so poor though we couldn't afford. You could get a clarinet from the school for $2 a semester, and it took us. Oh man, it must have took me about a whole semester to get $2 together. Oh. You know, to get the. But anyway, getting back to that, what Lionel Hampton was very popular at that time, you know, and Lionel used to go around with his sticks off the bandstand. He'd play on the floor, he'd play on the walls, he'd play all over the place. So I used to imitate him. That's why.
I see.
And that's how, you know, kids would just go crazy. You know? I'm playing shit, but they just go play.
You're playing the room.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
He also said something about, he had a nice quote about you. He said, Chico to me is, in a sense, like Duke Ellington. He plays his music using any player, any group of instruments. Doesn't matter what it is, he puts his own stamp on it.
That's true. That's true. You know, being a band leader, or a leader of a group, it's more than just having a name, of creating a name, or building a name. It's being able to knowing when to how to present something. Knowing, I have an innate thing about, well, knowing talent, hearing talent, and seeing talent. And I know that it takes two things, two very important things to reach a stage where you can make music, and that's patience and fortitude. This I learned very, you know, in my youth, early youth. So I have the patience to watch a talent develop. And since I'm in the driver's seat, since I'm there keeping time for them, I can guide them. I can play to their weakness and help them become strong, you know? So, and knowing that whatever talent that they might have, that there's always a resentment, a tremendous resentment when someone is different. You know, I've been considering, okay, I'm an innovator. I know that. Whether that's good or bad or indifferent, but it's a very lonely life because you're constantly doing things, you know. I passed the stage of trying to please. I don't please anybody. I play music for music's sake. There should be no substitute for not playing your best, playing whatever you play. You play your best. And this is my whole thing, my whole being. You know, whatever I do, I might sound good, bad, or indifferent. Hey, but I'm doing my best. So whenever you're different, there's going to be 10 to 1 that's not going to dig you. For an old colloquial expression, dig means like, or dislike.
Yeah.
You know? But knowing or feeling that, hey, man, nobody they wanted me to fire Eric Dolphy.
Dolphy, yeah.
They wanted me to fire Charles Lloyd. You know, they wanted me, you know, Larry Coryell, you know, people like that. I said, later for that, straight ahead, you know?
Right.
And what happens? These guys turn out to be young geniuses.
Yeah.
You know,
and the list of people that you have, as you said, have had patience with is really impressive. And as a youth, you must have played some interesting gigs on the way up.
Oh, yeah.
Strip shows, that kind of stuff, whatever came along.
Hey, man, you know, speaking of that, when when Jack, we had this, there was a band. There was a gentleman in L.A. His name was Myers, and we used to call him Old Man Myers. Jack and I used to play with him in his orchestra. He had, I think, 3 sons. One played piano, one played trumpet, and one played, I think, bass, if I remember. And he played trumpet. And Jack and I, and we used to play places where, you know, roadhouses where it's an all-colored orchestra, you know, which was a big deal, right? That type of thing. Anyway, we play. Well, I'm just trying to think of places. You know, we would play. Incidentally, we'd get paid, right? 75 cents. I mean, like half $1 and a quarter. And we'd have a kitty. And we'd travel maybe 35, 40, 50 miles to these roadhouse places, you know?
To make 75 cents.
To make 75 cents plus the kitty, you know, which was maybe come to $1, you know, that type of thing. But anyway, playing, it was all part of it. It was all part of playing music. It was all part of being a musician. It was all part of, you know. One thing led to another. The experience you had over here helped you with the experience on the next gig. Yeah, that type of thing. As a matter of fact, what did you ask me? I forgot. What was the original question?
We were asking about just, you know, paying dues and the interesting kind of gigs that would come up.
Hey man,
dance halls and
man, listen, man, we played. I recall years ago, man, we played a rodeo.
Played a rodeo.
Yeah. And we won a flatbed truck, right? And man, the bull, those charging bulls got loose, man, and he jumped up on that.
Oh, God.
It's terrible, man. It was funny.
It's funny to talk about it now, but
you can just imagine seeing that, you know. And I've had a lot of beautiful experiences playing with various. I think the most rewarding, in a sense, experience that I've had. I spent about 15 years, you know, playing for singers, nothing but singers. And I was with Lena Horne for 8 years. And during that period with Lena Horne, it took me out of the realm of just being a musician. It took me into showbiz. There's a big difference between a musician, a jazz musician, and the showbiz people, and the whole thing. It just opened up a whole new world for me, you know. And through that 8 years, we played. I played for some of the most notable people of the times during that era, you know. And we played all over the world, things like that. And I became her husband, Lenny Hayden, he became my mentor. I learned a hell of a lot about music from this man. This man was, he was a genius, you know, and a gentleman, class. He taught me how to play chess. He taught me how to eat a lobster.
Yeah.
Know, things like that, you know.
Yeah.
Taught me how to drink cognac. No, he was a good dude. He was, and we were friends. He and Luther Henderson and Billy Strayhorn were my, whatever. They were my, I was the kid. They they embraced me. And it was very rewarding because the things that I learned are still with me today. I try to, in turn, bestow this upon other younger players. Yeah. You know, they come up that are on the scene today, you know, because be a professional, you know.
It's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's not. But if you know, if you think in terms of being a professional, hey, you know, you can get, just like a doctor, a lawyer, anybody else, you're a professional musician, you know?
What was the racial atmosphere like between musicians in the, late 40s in L.A.?
Racial?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Were blacks and whites allowed to play together, or?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, oh, yeah. Out in L.A., anyway. You know, I don't know about the rest of the country, because I didn't leave L.A. until I was about 21, I think, something like that, you know. But to my knowledge, you know, it was, as a matter of fact, one of my early group, when Buddy Collette left the group, Paul Horne joined the group, right? And I was billed as Chico Hamilton in his all-white orchestra, you know?
Is that right?
Yeah. So,
because you had Carson Smith.
Carson Smith, Paul Horne, John Passano, and Fred Katz. So, oh man, I went through a whole lot of shit, but it doesn't bother, you know. We went through. I don't even talk about that stuff because it's not worth it, man.
Right.
It's not worth it.
Well, much has been made of the sound of that group. I mean, that was like this much of your career, really.
Yeah.
A few, what, 6 years, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
That sound with the cello and the pianoless. Did that come about from sitting down and thinking, let's find something different here, or was it a more practical?
Originally, the group was going to be a French horn. John Gross. He was the #1 French horn player on the West Coast at that time when I formed the group. I already had the group was intact with Buddy and Jim Hall and Carson. And Buddy and I came up musically together. Carson and I were with Gerry together. And Jim Hall was just a stroke of luck. He needed a gig, and he heard that I was organizing, putting a group together, because he was stacking music in a music store at that time. He wasn't even playing.
Yeah.
And the day of the first rehearsal, if I remember correctly, John Gross had a heart attack and died. Ooh. And that night, I was doing a thing with Fred. Fred and I had been together. Fred was with me when I was with Lena. And I told Fred my plight. And we got to talking, you know. So Fred says, well, Cheeks, if you like, I'll come over. And I said, dynamite. So that's how it happened. And I go on record, it's also in my book, the fact that like that group and the Gerry Mulligan quartet, that group, we just happened to be the right people at the right place at the right time. It was no stroke of genius. We just happened to, Chet, Gerry, myself, and Bob were like, it was right. It all started in my living room. The same room that the Gerry Mulligan quartet started with. My quintets rehearsed in the same room, my living room, my house in L.A., you know?
Wow.
So I just think it's just, happen to be in the right place at the right time. Critics, historians, or people, everyone wants to make something, genius, that's bullshit. Hey, this is how it happened. I mean, this.
Sure.
So, it's just like this. I did a solo one time in the studio where we were recording, and I dropped my stick. This is the truth, man. Somebody, and it was recorded, right? Somebody transcribed this and made a drum solo out of it, and made a big record out of it. You know?
They even had the
So,
part where the stick fell. Yeah, that's great.
so anyway. But it was I really feel that sincerely, that we just happen to be the right guys at the right place. Same thing I feel about, you know, Miles and his groups. Any group that is put together, and the sound is there, and the feeling is there, they're the right people for the right, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why you asked me about that reunion CD.
Right.
You can't go back, man. That's 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years. And we went on tour, right? And it wasn't the same. Here it is, you know, all those guys 30 years older.
Yep.
And it just, the moments weren't there. You can't go back. I mean, I feel anyway.
Yeah.
Nostalgia is fantastic, but in your emotions, that's all we got is memories, you know, from one moment to the next, right? And you try to make as many pleasant moments as you possibly can have, because, hey, when you look back, that's what you want to look at. But you can't capture feelings. It's over. So you got to look forward, you know, hey, look for something, turn the corner, turn the page.
Right. It's almost like to recreate what that was, you would have had to set aside all your experiences from then on to try to
Exactly.
get back to that.
Exactly.
That would be.
It's not putting Fred or Buddy down, or, you know, it's not putting anybody down. It's just that I'm a different person. And my newest, the Timely album, is living proof of, you know, hey, you might not like it as well, but hey, what the hell? It's what I'm doing now. You know, somebody likes it because it's been moving. You know, and I'm still doing it. I'm still playing all over the world, so which is cool. But it's like, how many Benny Goodman bands really did it? How many Count Basie bands did it? How many Duke Ellington bands did it? Regardless of personnel, was very few changes, you know, during that era. But he couldn't, you know, after Prez left Basie, as far as I'm concerned, nobody filled that chair. Even though, you know, as well as Illinois played, as well as Lockjaw played, you know, whoever was soloing. Buddy. Hey, well, even Buddy.
Well, he filled the other fellow's chair.
Yeah.
Even that was different. Yeah.
It was different from Herschel, you know.
Right.
So, see, that's another thing about young players today, which made it more. I was very fortunate because, man, I come up at the right time.
Yeah.
I come up at the right time, and these young dudes today, man, it's totally impossible because you don't have the bands. There's nothing like a big band, an experience in playing with a big band, or listening to a big band, you know, or breathing with a big band, you know. There's nothing like that experience. So, and thank goodness, man, one thing I would say about the jazz educators throughout the universities, the schools, fortunately, man, they're doing everything they can to keep this, keep it going.
Yeah.
Because outside of that, nothing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because the media won't accept, you know, TV will not. TV has done more to hurt the big bands, you know, the big broad sound, than it has to help them. TV has hurt jazz, you know. If you know, can you imagine if TV had to devote 1/3 of the time that they devote to this other kind of music, this what they refer to music? You know, people would still be into this form of music. I would say form of music.
Okay.
You know.
Right.
So in essence, a family that listens to jazz together stays together.
Ooh, there's a good statement.
That's heavy, right?
Yeah. In the 60s, rock was, you know,
Yep.
obviously very prevalent. Did the popular music of the day affect your thinking, your own personal style?
During that era when we came up, which was in the middle of the 50s, fundamentally, all we were trying to do, man, is play in tune. Play some good music and play in tune. That's basically what we were. That's all we were looking forward to doing, because you had to. In order, the whole thing just turned lopsided. Saxophone players, the only time they could go to get a job recording in the studio is they put some gloves on and play. You know, that's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
You know what kind of sound they're going to get, right? And that's all the kind of people that they were recording, letting record. All of a sudden, man, when the CPAs and attorneys took over and made this music into a business, that's when the change came about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's well, look, just look at this. What was it last year? What is it? This year? Last year? The Grammy so-called thing, right?
Right. The Grammy so-called thing.
Man, you know, they won't even put. They refuse. They won't even let the jazz artists have any airtime.
Right. Previously, awards given out.
Previously awards given out. You believe that? You know?
Yeah, I've heard this point before, and you're backing up what a couple other people have said, is that some of the record companies used to be run by musicians, and then that kind of ended, and then things changed quite a bit.
Well, it became a business.
Yeah.
You know, super business. And we're drinking apple juice.
Apple juice. That's right. 1966, started a production company.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I was doing commercials.
Yeah.
It was very successful. Very successful. As a matter of fact, I would say during that part of the 60s, some of the best music on television was the commercial music, because they were using jazz.
Yeah.
A lot of jazz.
Can you mention a few commercials that
I did?
I might
Sure.
recognize?
The first time IBM ever went on the air, they had 3-minute spots, which was considered a feature. You know, I did all the music for IBM. I did the music for Revlon, Chrysler, Volkswagen. My first commercial that I ever did was when cigarettes were on air, Spring cigarettes. Spring is ba-da, ba-da, da-da, da-da. I did that. I had that whole campaign. Ivory soap. Ivory. I did that. You know, I did. It was very successful. I reached a point though that I got tapped out. I reached a point that I was doing everything for the money. It didn't matter what it was. And you start pigeonholing things, you know? And one day, man, I was at a meeting, big meeting, and because not only was I the composer and arranger, but I was a producer as well.
Yeah.
And when you know, as a producer, man, you know, I'm handling accounts at that time, maybe $250,000 account, you know, that kind of, the money that was going to be spent, you know, in regards to that. But I was at this one meeting, I was there maybe about several hours, and at the end of the meeting, they said, Chico, we'll call you, just like that. So I said, you know, I got up and I walked to the elevator, and I hit the elevator, punched the elevator, and as I was waiting for the elevator to come up, all of a sudden, the realization just hit me, just, don't call us, we'll call you. And man, I just said, screw that, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it. I stopped. I just cut everything. I came home, came back to my office. I told my wife, I said, hey, listen, babes, I've had it. I'm going to start doing what I'm supposed to be doing again. I'm going to start playing again. And I started.
All right. And so how long a span of years was that you...
Well, I started, let's see, from 66 till up in the 70s, up until the 80s maybe. It was long. You know,
Wow.
it was long.
That's a high-pressure world to be in, isn't it?
Man, I learned how to drink in the daytime.
Yeah.
You know, the 3 martini lunch.
Oh.
I'd never drank before in my life in the daytime, you know?
Yeah.
I learned that.
Learned how to schmooze.
It's unbelievable, man. But anyway, it was good, though.
Yeah.
I made a lot of dough. But you can't, you know, what good is the dough when you lose, you kind of lose something, you know? So.
Where do you write? Do you write at the piano? Do you sit and...
Oh, no, I write on the piano, on the keyboard. I'm not a very good piano player, but...
It gives you enough to hear the chords, conceive of a melody and so forth. Oh.
Yep.
Well, you have been recording for...
Umpteen years.
Since 1941, Slim and Slam.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, Slim Gaylord was a genius. Was a pure genius. He, and there was a drummer out there, a trombone player and scat singer by the name of Leo Watson. He was a genius. These guys, anything they touch, they made music with it. Slim Gaylord was unbelievable, unbelievable, unbelievable. He's fascinating.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable. And you know, Slam, Arco.
Oh yes.
So, but yeah, that was very. I was about maybe 14, 15, 16, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And everything, of course, was... The recordings back in those days, you were in a room and everybody played together and...
When you didn't go into the studio then, unless you were at the peak of your perfection.
Oh.
It wasn't, you know, you didn't rehearse in the studio. You were ready. When you went into the studio, that was it. You know? That was it. As a matter of fact, I made an album, I think it was, I don't know what label it was on. I think it was either Capitol or some label. It's called Reaching for the Top. It was a new method, whereas we did at least 10 tunes, 10 things, 10 arrangements. We didn't stop because it was a continuous, you couldn't stop, because if you did, you had to go right back to the top. Start all over again. Oh. And we had to play everything. We played that whole album without any repeats or without stopping, you know, which is cool, you know.
Wow.
Well, that's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You know. And then being a producer too, man. I you know, doing commercials, time was money. And by the time I'd get ready to go in the studio to do a spot, I was ready. We were ready. I'd rehearse before time. You know, when we go in there, boom. 1 or 2 takes. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, that's another thing. When you're recording, you know whether I'm not. I don't care if the note is wrong. If the emotional aspect, the feeling is there, the overall feeling, and somebody has a moment, a high moment. Hey, man, that's it. That's the take.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Because here again, regardless whether it sounds good or bad or indifferent, that's you. That's what, you know. To go back in, to edit, that's cheating, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You know? That's not right.
Yeah, take this 8 bars and
that's not right.
put it in there.
You know?
You're going to always know that was doctored.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot. The only person that did that I approve of doing that, and it came out masterfully, was Gil Evans with Miles's things. With Miles ahead.
So there was some
well, he had to,
manipulation.
he had to, because it was, you know, that was.
It was very challenging music, you know.
It's unbelievable, man.
Wow.
Just hip. some of the hippest stuff ever, ever, ever.
The list of people that have been beside you is astounding. What was it like to work with Mingus?
Charlie, Charles, well, Charlie and I was, you know, we grew up together. We came up together.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, we sort of had a love-hate relationship type of thing. I remember one time we were in Oakland, California. We were with Floyd Ray's band, and I was doing a drum solo. And man, Charlie came out, went backstage and got a hammer, and came out and started hammering the bandstand with the
Was he playing in time?
But Mingus was, Charles was, but he was always like that.
Yeah.
He was all like, he and my wife used to go to Sunday school together. So, that, you know, that's how long we've been knowing each other, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, Charlie was very misunderstood dude, period. As a youngster, as a young man, and as a grown man, and even as a musician. Yeah. Because we all more or less got had the same beginning, same schooling, same thoughts. You know, the one thing that we all had in common was the fact that we all dug music. You know, and there was never any doubt in any of our minds that we weren't going to be musicians, that we weren't musicians. You know, even then. So.
Yeah. We certainly had the fortitude. Maybe he was a little short on the patience thing that you mentioned.
Well, Charles was pretty hip too, man. He'd do a lot of things just for see what
get a reaction.
To get a reaction.
Yeah.
You know, he's a psycho. He knew what you were going to do, how you were going to react.
Andy Kaufman of jazz, huh? Just to get a rise out of the people. If I was to pick out
a tune on there,
yeah, just to play a little bit.
You want to play one of mine?
Yeah, I'd love to.
What kind of groove you want?
I want something pretty funky.
Something pretty funky? Do we do anything funky on there? It's not funky, but it's really charming.
All right.
It's called Mr. Andrew J. Caddick.
All right.
I don't know what track that is.
You have to look in there, I think.
Hey, you got your glasses on?
Yeah.
I wrote this for my manager, who's been with me for over 10 years.
Wow.
Young.
Not sure I can. There it is. Jeffrey.
Andrew Caddick.
Okay. And we'll see if this is right. Oh, come on here.
That's it.
I love that bass sound. That's beautiful.
That's just bass and guitar and drums.
Yeah.
And they got that little flow, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swing.
Beautiful. Can you recall when you first brought this to the group, how much describing, for instance, that guitar thing, did you describe to your guitar player, I want something kind of ethereal, or did you let them try things and guide them?
No, not really. I didn't have to tell Gerry what to do.
No.
You know,
That's why you have him, right?
exactly. Yeah. I just wrote the melody, and that was all. Just blow. And his voicing of his chords, that's his. That's Gerry's thing. You know? It's a complete departure from everything else on the album. But it's... It's a simple little melody.
Yeah. That's nice.
See, you can't, there's no substitute for simplicity and continuity. It's just like patience and fortitude, really. But simplicity and continuity, these are the things that are very effective. These are the things that are haunting. These are the things that you remember, that your brain retains. You know?
It's singable.
Yep.
It's lovely. Well, that's great.
That's just an example of that. It's got a lot. This is a good album, man.
All right,
Really.
we'll be checking it out.
Yeah.
And do you hear artists out there these days that you think are doing anything new?
That's hard. That's difficult for me to say because, first of all, you know, don't get around much anymore. But if I do, I'm on the outskirts of town or something.
Yeah.
But just listening to the records or CDs, the things, unfortunately, no, because for some, I don't know why Blue Note wants to recreate Art Blakey's sound. You can't. There's no there's no players that's going to play that they're they can duplicate it, but it's not, the feeling's not there. So why not let these new artists, young artists, do their own thing? You know what I mean? Give them their own voice. And therefore, that's the reason it's difficult. Now, I teach at the New School. I teach two classes down there, two courses. One is rhythm analysis, another one is ensemble improvisation. And there's a lot of potential talented young people down there. Hopefully, in every opportunity I have to confront them, I try to instill in them, hey, be yourself, do your thing. Don't try to play like so-and-so and so. You play what you feel, you know? Use your ideas. Use your thoughts. It'll happen, you know? So, hopefully, something will develop, you know, some of them will develop. But overall, man, you see, it's like the people who originated this music, who originated this style, who originated this form, there's no duplication. You can, Lamam shows you can play like, you know, it be like it, but it's not the same. It's just like Wynton Marsalis with the
Lincoln Center.
Lincoln Center Orchestra. Duke. Ain't nothing Dukish about what he's doing, as far as I'm concerned. It's not that, you know, musically they play beautifully, but as far as I'm concerned, they don't swing.
Well,
You know,
why? That's amazing.
Unfortunately, I have to put it on the rhythm section.
Uh-huh.
You know, they play the same charts that Duke played. That, you know, and there's a world of difference. Hey, the personnel.
Yeah.
You know,
Sometimes I think it might have something to do with
it becomes so sterile, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's too clean.
too clean.
Too clean.
Yeah. Too much
Yeah.
and amplification.
Yeah.
You know, if you start making the bass too loud, it affects the way the music was conceived, I think.
It's like, how can you duplicate the train? How can you duplicate Bird, a Sweets, you know, a Prez, you know, a Diz? You know, it's just like these so-called radio stations. They call themselves jazz station. Man, I purposely don't listen to them, but I listened to them all last week, right? Because I was home, and the whole length of time I was listening to them, the whole week, I think they played one Charlie Parker record and one Dizzy Gillespie record, a whole week.
Mm.
You know, never Chico Hamilton.
Yeah. I was going to
know.
say,
No, they were
did you get in there? Yeah.
never. Don't play my music. You know, I don't know. Maybe they got something against me. You know, I was a bad guy or something. I talked about them or something. I don't know. Who cares? But they do a lot to dictate what people will listen to, and they also turn a lot of people off. That's the reason a lot of young people won't listen to jazz. So they don't want to, you know, they don't want to hear what these people think what really jazz is.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to think about, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Somehow we've managed to make jazz,
a dirty name.
yeah, a little inaccessible,
Yep.
hard to like. You know, we have to go to a lot of work to like.
Well, I have a philosophy on that too. Reason why, the whyness of why of that is during the groupie. What period in this country? You know, when the groupies and people all decided, hey, they're gonna cop out and just become whatever. You know, during the
Like
Woodstock.
Oh,
you
okay.
know, what do you call it? What was that called? Period?
in the '60s era, the
dropouts or whatever.
the hippies.
The hippies?
Yeah,
Okay,
all right.
hippies, okay. See, hippie was,
Yeah, hip used to mean hip.
but the reason for that was, I mean, what I'm getting at was, and this is a funny philosophy, but when these people start turning off, they turn, first things they turn off were their parents. Old-fashioned, old hat. So they in turning the parents off, they turn off everything parents dug, everything they liked. Jazz was one of them. Jazz is one of the things, hey, I don't like it because my parents like it. So, hey, I'm gonna go over here and hear this other shit. You want to bleep that out? Keep that in. But anyway, so that's where the division began. They didn't like it because of their parents liked it. And from there, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In the meantime, this other thing was thrust. Next thing you know, they had a program on television last week, I guess it was sometime last week, called American Music or something. I don't know whether you heard, where they gave out awards.
Oh yeah, the American Music Awards. Yeah.
Man, that was some of this.
Sorriest.
Hey man, I'm not bitter. I'm not envious. I'm not jealous. I'm not. Hey man, it's straight ahead for everybody. I mean, the more the better. You know, man, I didn't believe some of that stuff. I did not believe what these people considered talent. I did not believe what these people considered good. Mediocrity is king now, man. You know?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, man, young people don't have an opportunity to decide what is good and what is bad and what is different. They don't even have a culture. They have not, you know, at least we develop a culture so that we can look back and say, hey, well, so-and-so did so-and-so, or so-and-so is responsible for this. Hey, well, man, that's a dynamite chair. Wow, it was designed. They don't have this. What they have is, you know, is how high can you get? How outlandish can you be? How funky can you be? Shit. Don't let me get started, man.
Right, I know.
I'm not bitter, man.
I know.
That's cool. That's cool, man.
I object most to being yelled at by the music. You know, I see these guys back and forth on the stage, like, yelling. It bothers me. What are you so mad about, you know?
There's nothing new about rap. They acknowledge it as music now. This is music. But there's nothing new about that. In the days of the kings, queens, King Arthur, of the Round Table, they had the court gesture. That's what he did. He rapped. Nobody had sang the songs, a melodic song. That's all they did was rap.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Man, when I was a kid, young dude, we had a thing we called playing the dozens. That was rapping. The dirty dozens, you know, when you talked about each other's mother and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
That was rap. Because you made things rhyme, you know?
Uh-huh.
Which is, so, I'm completely astounded at the amount of monies that these things, that this generates, that they've generated. It's just like the amount of monies that they have generated with the so-called American music kind of thing. The kind of money that these people make, not make, but are given. Whew. Man. It seemingly some of them would do something good with it, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know? I don't see why they wouldn't, you know, the kind of money that, like, can you imagine recording, man? They spent a whole year in a studio.
All right.
To make one track. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, man, for one track. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. Too many toys to play with, I think.
Unbelievable, man.
Do you think technology has been a positive influence on recording or not?
Technology is dynamite. I'm all for it. But it's the people, it's the hands that are behind the that are controlling the technology. I think they should grow as well as the technical aspects of technology.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
You know, I think the hands. You know, it's like. It's just like there's no substitute for a breath-blowing instrument. You can put your hand on a key and hold that note for 2 weeks if you want to. But you can't hold a note breathing for 2 weeks. So holding that note, breathing that breath, when you do decide to breathe, it comes under the heading of phrasing. And what that phrase is all about is what is what your heart, your head, your ears, your soul feels and hears. Not how long that sustaining power is. You know?
Yeah. It's like that bass player who played your melody.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
You can breathe with that thing and
exactly.
sing it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So the technology of the technicians is fantastic, but the technicians themselves should become as contemporary as the instruments that they're applying themselves, that they're playing with. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's just like goddamn engineer, man, destroyed the drum in the studio. They destroyed the natural sound of the drum. They got it so padded, they got it this, you know, that the drum doesn't sound like a drum anymore. It doesn't sound like whoever's playing you don't hear their sound.
Yeah.
They all sound alike.
Well, you have some great philosophies, and it's just refreshing to...
It's time to get out of Dodge, right?
It's time to get out of Dodge. Well, it's refreshing to hear, you know, your ideas, and interesting that you're a forward-thinking person, you know,
I sort of pride myself on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, at least being contemporary. You know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but at least, hey, man, I'm willing to give everybody a shot. Really, you know, in regards to, hey, well, maybe I don't dig it, but hey, you know, it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere. You know, so,
all right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like when you take a drink at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? It's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. So, I enjoyed this, man. So, hey, listen, man. Now, I want to come up to the school, man, and play. I want to bring my group up and play. Let you hear something, you know, a little different than from what you're going to hear every day.
Right.
All right?
All right, I'll check into it.
Dynamite.
Thanks for your time.
Hey, it's cool.
Appreciate it.
Right.